questions, this journey starts. All these hesitations fill my heart. One thing I ask of you, Lord, surely this can't be wrong. Give me a voice, will you to sing a new song?
Wow, it's great to sing that song again.
Yes, definitely.
Having just come off our second No Ordinary Week in Jerusalem, this is the heart of it, really, isn't it?
For sure.
Talking about Im Emunah means, well, it can mean two things. It can mean with faith, or it can mean if there's faith.
If there is faith.
And I suppose that's the challenge in some ways, is keeping that faith for
sure.
us, that what we're doing is what God's called us to.
Yeah, I mean, also, this time I felt that, we've had a great group.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Fascinating questions, insights, group full of spirit.
Yeah.
But I felt that this time, when like organizing everything, I felt like things were a bit, it didn't go as smooth. I felt, like organizing it and putting
beforehand.
beforehand, and also during. I mean, that my son went through a surgery when we were right in the middle of the week.
Unexpected.
So unexpected, definitely
hospital.
unexpectedly. He went into a surgery just to remove his appendix, but it got a bit more complicated than just that. And he actually spent 2 weeks in the hospital after surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And that happening in the middle of the week, on top of like other things that were like behind the stage of difficulties to put everything and like so that everything can really happen the way it should. I felt like we've had some challenges this time, and just these words, im emunah, like just with faith, and like if you know that you're doing what you are called to do, that really gives a lot of strength.
Yeah, it's I have to say, for me, doing these weeks, it feels maybe like the most important thing I've ever done in my life. I can sort of think back. I think back to the writing of Oratorio Terezin and all those things. But this is like the outcome. It's the there comes a point when we can talk about things, but there comes a point when God says, "So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it?"
Sure.
And that's what these weeks feel like for me. And my heart was really to be able to invite others to be able to share my journey with them, in the hopes that along the way they'll get it. And so for me to hear people say, "Well, I knew God said I was to love Israel, to love His people. I knew it here, but now it's here." When someone says something like that to me, it's like, wow, it's worth it. It's worth every second I'm here. It's worth it.
I think I said it once, during the week that, this is what I want to do when I'm older. How you often ask a child, so what do you want to do? When you're older, and I think that's really the thing.
It's amazing.
It feels really like a call, like a special calling, and I just want to say yes. I really want to do it. I'm enjoying every minute of it. It doesn't take any of my energy. Just like other things that I'm doing. It's just
it gives energy.
Exactly. Exactly. And
so we really want to invite people, don't we, to join us? We're having another one in March. March the 6th to the 13th, and there's room for you. Please,
we already have about 50% of the people, basically, 50%. So we have more room for more people to join. Registration is until when?
Till the end of I can't remember. End of December. Yeah, it's till the end of December. So you still got time. Make it a surprise Christmas present for your spouse or your kids or whatever. I mean, yeah. Or you know what? If you can't come, maybe you'd like to send someone, because there are many people that say, "Oh, I'd so love to come, but I just can't afford it." It's a lot of money to buy a flight to Israel and then to pay to actually be here, and we stay in a lovely hotel, and it's a kind of a classy time in that sense, how it works, and so maybe you'd like to send someone, and that would be really great.
We'll be very happy to have you with us.
Happy to welcome you. Okay, so what are we talking about this week?
Okay, so this, we are now on another Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is basically the beginning, the
new
head.
Month.
Yes, a new month in the Jewish calendar. And, this month is actually the month of Tevet. It's called Tevet. But the beginning of Tevet always falls during Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it always falls during Hanukkah. Hanukkah begins on the 25th day of the month of Kislev,
right,
which is our current time.
So that's actually tomorrow night it starts,
and
right?
Hanukkah starts tomorrow night.
Yes.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
And
it's such a special time. I never knew.
Very much.
I always heard of Hanukkah, but I never knew the story. And it's only really recently that I've started to appreciate just how this story celebrates God's miracle of provision.
For sure.
And what an incredible thing to be celebrating for a week. Like, who does that? Where else can you do that? You're celebrating the miracle of God's provision. And it's amazing.
It's it really is a special time, and it's not like it's not like Pesach or Shavuot or Sukkot or like Feast of Tabernacle or Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. These holidays are very big and like full of details how to keep them, and like it's a lot of preparation. And here comes Hanukkah, which is just like a week. Yeah, it's like a week in the middle of the winter, beginning of the winter, more to be more exact. And we just take 8 days. Kids are off school for a week, and
they're very excited.
They're very excited. That's for sure. And it's it doesn't have too many details. It's just talking about the miracle of being rescued at that time, and we will of course talk about that today. And it's really about increasing light. Hanukkah, with the miracle we've had, in the temple with the menorah, and so we light the Hanukkah, and it's really about increasing.
This is the Hanukkah.
Yes, this is the Hanukkah, which I must say it is not a menorah, right? I mean, usually people come to Israel and like they see that and they think automatically about the menorah.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that this is not the menorah. The menorah had basically, the middle candle, and then 3 on each side.
Right.
And the Hanukkah has the middle candle, but it has 4 on each side, because 4 that makes it like an 8, so 8 days of the holiday, 8 days of the miracle, and the middle one is the one we actually use in order to light the others. So I've talked to my 7-year-old, and I've come to realize that he had that he even had that mistake. He said, well, yes, one of the symbols of our country is the Hanukkah, which is not, right? That's the menorah, because they don't count, and they just see it and they have automatically this connotation, but it's not. I mean, the Hanukkah is different, and it really, really carries the meaning of that particular miracle that happened in.
And each night, like on the first night, you light one candle. Right?
Yes, we light, of course, the middle one, and then we use it to light one, and then every day we add another one. So on the last day, you have. So
the light gets brighter and brighter as you celebrate,
stronger and stronger.
Which is that's a beautiful picture of how our. When we give thanks for miracles, the process of giving thanks, it builds, it grows something in us, and it becomes.
Well, I think any process, walking with God is like that. Even us carrying something in our soul, as we live our lives, our soul is meant to grow, like to be bigger and to develop and to improve and it's exactly like that. It's like adding more light and making the light shine brighter.
So tell us the story.
Okay, so
I want to
maybe just before the story, the thing about the Hanukkah is not to light it indoor. The thing is to light it outdoor, to light it outside.
So this one wouldn't really work out there. Because it's going to blow out.
We actually have these glass boxes, and we put our Hanukkah inside that glass box, and then it keeps it from the wind,
right?
And then everybody basically walking on the street can see it. So if you live, let's say, in a building, like apartment building, then people actually put their Hanukkah. They put it outside their door frame, so that people, let's say, on the corridor, they can actually walk by it and see it.
Lovely.
If you watch people living, let's say, in the big cities, there are every year, like in Fifth Avenue in New York, you have it in Trafalgar Square in London, in Paris, in Geneva, in Switzerland. In every big city, you have like a big Hanukkah. It's about publishing the miracle.
Yes.
Make it famous.
Make it known.
Make it known. Make people. We actually use the word publish it, exactly, לפרסם את הנס, to make it famous, so that people can see it and ask what's this all about, and then you can tell them about the miracle. And then they would ask, wow, I mean, when was this? When did it happen? And then we would say, well, a bit over than 2,000 years ago, but we still celebrate it because it's we are a link in the chain, and we have to carry
from my place in Jerusalem, up on the roof there. Right. It was great. Each year I would see them with a huge Hanukkah. And then they actually have to go. They bring the fire truck with the platform, and then they take it. The rabbi goes up, and often with a little kid as well with him, little boy with him,
because it's all about the children.
Yeah, and each night they would light a different one. It was really very special.
It's a very, very special time. And if you drive here in Jerusalem, you would see, like, in any intersection or even on highways, you would see all of a sudden this like big one that any organization would put just to.
And all the shops, like all the shops in Jerusalem, they all have them just outside or somewhere.
Yes. And we light it at sundown.
Right.
So right at sundown, a bit like 20 minutes after, when it's really completely dark, and then we need to light it. We don't light it during the day.
Right. Special.
So the story about Hanukkah.
Yes.
So Hanukkah is basically a story that goes back to the time of the Second Temple, when we had kind of like a government coming from the family of Hashmonai. And some people know the Maccabees. The Maccabees were basically some kind of like a defense force of that government. So it's from the same time, and it was a time in which the Greeks basically came to Jerusalem, and they weren't that nice, let's put it this way, and they've given like all kinds of let's say rules that Jews were not allowed to practice religion at all. Jews were not allowed to do a circumcision to the babies, not allowed to study from the Torah, not allowed to keep Shabbat in public, not allowed to keep the holidays. We still had the temple, but in public, like on the streets, no religion was allowed to be performed, no practicing. And the Jews were very embarrassed by it. I mean, they were very in shock. But for almost 4 years, nobody did anything. Nobody actually did.
They just kind of.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this army came. Yes, this army came, and they had to put up with it. And for 3 years and 8 months, horrible things were said, by the Greeks, and nobody did anything. Nobody stood up and said, we're not gonna cope with that. And they tried to keep it low profile. And I think the worst thing, and that basically made them, stand up and rebel, was that for during this time, any young lady who was about to get married, she had to go the night before the chuppah, the night before the wedding took place. She had to go for the whole night to the Greek ruler, and to spend the night with him.
Oh gosh! Wow!
All the Jewish ladies, the night before the chuppah, they had to go and to spend the night with him. With him or any of his officers.
Right. Wow. So,
and this happened for quite a while, as we said, and there was one time that a woman called Yehudit, she was the daughter of the Jewish leader of that time. Okay, think of the daughter of the prime minister, for instance, and it was the night before her wedding. And they had they had this, big celebration because it was the night before the wedding. Everybody knew that right after the feast is going right after the feast ends, she will have to go to the Caesar or the ruler of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And but nobody said anything about that. They came to celebrate the wedding. The daughter of the prime minister, and she married a boy from a very honorable family of that time in Jerusalem, and they've had that feast. And that young lady called Yehudit, she said enough is enough, and she did something very extreme, very extreme. She stood up. She stood up in front of everybody on that celebration, basically wearing nothing. And they were all very, very amazed. They were like shocked. They were so shocked and angry. That our history, in our history, they say that her brothers, the Maccabees, they wanted to kill her right there. And she told them, does this bother you? The fact that I did what? Does it make you does it make you feel ashamed? Does it make you feel awkward? What has been going on here for the past 3 years and 8 months? All the young ladies in Jerusalem had to go through the same thing in foreign men's arms.
Wow.
The holiness of the purity of the Jewish family has been desecrated for so long, and this bothers you? Why? Because I'm your sister? Because I'm your daughter? Because it hurts your good reputation? And they've listened, and this was basically the beginning of the rebellion against the Greeks. And when that started, when the rebellion began, this is basically when the story starts. The Greeks fought back, and they've managed to enter the temple. And when they've entered the temple, they've of course they have desecrated it. But the one thing that was very obvious is that they've ruined all the oil. The oil which was used for, the ointment oil, and the oil which was used to light the menorah in the temple. And that oil was a very, very special oil because it was made out of olives, first of all. It was made without any hand touching it. Okay, so it was so that it'll be very pure. And they've only used the first drop from each olive.
Wow.
The first drop only.
Do they still make oil like that?
Well, today no, because we don't have the menorah.
They don't.
Well, in Temple Institute, I think they do, because they are really preparing. But not. We don't make it. For any certain reason. It was a very, very special oil. It was very, very pure. And now they've desecrated all the inventory of that kind of oil. So basically, the priest could not light the menorah when the war ended, and thank God the Maccabees won, and the Greeks basically were out of Jerusalem. They came and they wanted to purify the temple again, and they wanted to start by lighting the menorah. They didn't have oil, but they've only had one tin, like one can of olive oil, which was an amount that basically lasted for 1 day. So they've used it, but the big miracle was that it lasted 8 days. So the amount of oil basically lasted 8 days, just in time for them to be able to make new oil. So once new oil was ready, that particular tin of oil finished. And that was basically the miracle, the big miracle.
Wow.
And it's about the light, it's about the menorah, and this is why we this is why we celebrate for 8 days, because of those 8 days of miracle that happened in the time of the temple. And that's why we have those 8 candles.
What do you think? What do you think God was saying to them when He did that miracle?
I want you back. I'm allowing you. I'm allowing you to overcome the challenge that I've given you. No, he never gives us a challenge or
it's like he was reinforcing
something bad, without also helping us overcoming. So he will always give us the tools and the means to overcome the challenge. It's never just a difficulty with nothing with nothing we can do about it. It's always with something, because he's talking to us through these things. And that act of Yehudit, that was the trigger for them to rebel and to begin this fight, this justified fight, for our identity, basically, so that we can be who we are. And that is why Hanukkah is also it's a holiday in which we quite often talk about Jewish identity, Jewish culture, as opposed to secular culture, which comes from different places in the world. You once told me that you even, like in the church, they talk about
being in the world and not of the world.
And not of the world. Yeah, you also mentioned, I think, once that Greek thinking as opposed to
the Hebrew thinking.
The Hebrew thinking.
Yes,
so for us, it's really the time to talk about that. We talk a lot about Greek culture.
Yes.
Okay, with which doesn't have to do with anything with Greece of today, obviously,
No.
but like
Because
Greek
all those things
culture
came out of that.
Of course, sports, and like the Olympics come from Greece, and yes, all these things, and that like this culture, this worldview that basically puts men in the center, and kind of how should I say, puts over sanctity of the body. Like the body
glorifies the body.
Exactly, glorifies the body. The body has to be strong and well developed, beautiful. And those were the rulers. And in Judaism, it's just the opposite. It's not about the body; it's about the soul. The body needs to exist in order the soul to exist, for sure. So we don't underestimate that. But that's not the main point.
No.
And
that's so opposite of our culture, of the culture of. Well, I think of the culture of the West, and just everything is about, the ones that are the most beautiful and the most handsome or whatever.
They are models.
Yes.
Right. Models, but are they role models?
Yeah.
Maybe they are. I don't know them personally, but It's every year on Hanukkah is a time that we talk about these things. Where is our culture going? Where is our culture going to? What do we want to bring to the next generation as well?
Right.
The word Hanukkah comes from the word. It's very much connected to the word chinuch in Hebrew. And chinuch is about it's education. How are we going to educate our children? What are we going to tell them? Who do we want to be role models for them? These types of questions that we deal with every year in Hanukkah.
I think you were touching on this a little bit when you wrote the post that you just put up on our Facebook page, Between Heaven and Earth, and you were talking about basically taking a stand like Yehudit did for truth. You were using the example of Joseph.
He did the same.
And how often do we hold back because of wanting to be politically correct or whatever? Looking at the way things are right now in the world, there's a lot of opportunities to be either grossly not politically correct, or to be politically correct to the extent that you end up saying nothing. The
question is, why do you do that? If you for instance, one of my students once asked me, he said, so how do you say we were talking, and then he wanted to use the term politically correct, but he wanted to use it in Hebrew, and he said, so how do you say politically correct in Hebrew? I said, well, if being politically correct was part of our thinking, and if we did have a word for it, most likely you wouldn't be here asking this question, in this country, because this country is just the complete opposite of being politically correct. The Jewish people coming back to its homeland, so much objection was in the world for that, back in the days, and the challenges that that we need to face, because in our Declaration of Independence, it definitely talks about the state of the Jews. Being Jewish, not only that it's a religion, it's also a race. It's a race.
Mm-hmm.
You are born Jewish. You don't choose it.
Right.
It's a race. And race is a word with a very bad and very negative connotation in the world today. But we can't ignore that there are races, let's say, in the world. It doesn't mean that one race is any better than the other, and that he needs to control another. That's definitely wrong. But it's okay to recognize the fact that in humanity is built like that. We have different types of race.
And to each race there are certain characteristics that God has kind of built into those races,
for sure.
Which is, we need to recognize those and honor them and celebrate them.
For sure. And each one can bring something new, and together, it's all weave to be humanity. And that's we are, in the end, we have one purpose that we need to live for. For sure, first of all, peace. Mm-hmm. And so basically there is no word for politically correct in Hebrew. And if we take Joseph, for instance, and we have written about it on Facebook already, but he knew that his life were not just ordinary life. Okay, he knew that they all knew that they were fathers of a whole nation, and then every little thing in their life has some relevance, for the future generations. Right. And even so, he had these dreams. He could have kept it to himself. His siblings hated him already. Okay, he didn't have to tell them those dreams, but he did, and he did it once. And guess what? He did it again on the second time. And on the second time, even his father is angry at him. How can you have these kinds of dreams? But he didn't choose it.
Well, have them, but don't talk about them.
Exactly. But in the end, he knew that it has some relevance, so he had to bring it up, even though he knew that he will pay a price for it. And it's the same thing with Yehudit. It's and with other leaders throughout her history, she had to stand up and speak up. To say the truth. And to make people to cause them make a stand, and it was very radical. It took a lot of courage to do what she did, and she paid a personal price. She really paid a personal price. Having everybody seeing her like that, but she knew she had to do something very radical, so that people would start to fight for the truth. The truth had to come out, and
it's really, as you're saying that. I'm just feeling of the sense as one who's not Jewish, living here, and in contact a lot with people that don't live here, in contact with Christians, where there's such a divide in how they view Israel, see Israel, and it's extremely hard to communicate how things really are, and sometimes it's extremely hard and potentially costly to relationships, to actually stand up and say it's not like that, it's like this, or for me it's the thing of always going back to the scriptures. What did God say? What does God say about this? Because in the end, it's the only truth that we have to go on. It's like we can't compare it with some other truth or truths that people are coming up with. There's either truth. There can't be more than one truth, right?
Exactly.
Truth is truth.
Exactly.
And so if we believe that what God says is true, what God has promised is true, if we believe that God is faithful, then it's a challenge. I'm challenging myself right here, and I want to challenge all my friends, all those that I would ever have any contact with. I would want to challenge us all to say, are you standing up? Am I standing up for truth? Or do I compromise? Do I hold back in order not to offend, in order not to rock the boat or make people not like me? And I think we're living in a time where that is more and more of a reality.
For sure.
To stand with your people, to stand with Israel.
And I think it's also on these things, they also go on a very personal level. In our daily life, we also have challenges, and we quite often talk about how intensive God's word is. And he has something to say about everything, right? And we have a list of 613 commands listed in the Torah, and it's very intensive, very intensive. It goes and it touches every little thing, every little aspect in your life, and it really puts you on this constant alert that you have to be on, and with every decision you make. Every decision you make, it has. I mean, he has something to say about it, and you have to be challenged with. Okay, am I going to go with it or am I not going to go with it? Because it's not all the time comfortable. I have to say, it's not all the time comfortable, and sometimes you have to make tough decisions that affect, your, how people see you, and it's really challenging. It's really challenging, but. This is what it is. When looking at the Hanukkah and the light coming from it, and you can look at this element, burning outside of your door. Someone can walk back and say, "Wow, fire!" And like just like that, he can just take water and pour, because it's dangerous. Or he can come closer to it and feel the warmth coming from it.
Interesting.
It's easy to talk about it, but it's something completely different to really go with it, with all your might.
It was interesting. I was just looking up on. I'm not quite sure why I looked it up, but just recently on Wikipedia, I was looking up Hanukkah, and the way it was written up was to the effect that these were 8 days that the Jews used to celebrate.
Used to.
Yes.
Really?
Used to.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, how much of the scriptures, and especially of the Torah, that I would read as a Christian, and it all seemed like it was something in the past. I never realized that Jewish people were still keeping these 613 laws. I thought, no, seriously, I thought that was given then, and that was what they did then. But I didn't realize it's what they do now.
It's there is this prayer that we pray twice a year. We prayed during the time of Hanukkah, and we also prayed during the time of Purim. Okay, now both of these holidays, they the reason why we keep them is for something that happened, let's say, after biblical time. Okay, even though the scroll of Esther, which tells the story of Purim, it's part of the Bible, but it was added only at a later stage. I mean, the story actually took place after the time of First Temple, let's say. And Hanukkah even more than Hanukkah is not scriptures based.
Right.
I mean, it's not anywhere in the Bible. No. So we have this prayer that we pray during those two holidays. And it's a thanking prayer. It's a thanking prayer for all the miracles and all the good things that God has given us, and He had done for us. And that prayer basically ends with four words: Bayamim hahem, bazman hazeh. Basically, all those great things happening on those days. like in the past, but in our time, in this time, because it's history repeats itself, and if we don't recognize that all that has happened in the past is still happening today in different forms. So the names of all the the characters that they change, and of course our clothes change, and our thinking is changed, and humanity is changing. But at the end of the day, it's the same story. It's the same story, and if we don't recognize it, it's going to be very hard to overcome the next challenge. So for all those great things and miracles that you've done to our fathers on those days in our time, because that the past and the present are linked, they're connected in an unbreakable connection.
So that we can expect the miracles in our time.
For sure,
absolutely,
for sure.
But so often I think when we think about miracles, we look. Well, it's easier to acknowledge a miracle after it's happened, but to believe for it in the middle of when you're needing it, that's a whole different thing.
That's true.
And so,
do you want to sing that?
Are we going to sing it?
Yes,
okay, so let's look at these words, because so ala nisim ve'ala purkan. So this is for the miracles, and the word purkan it's something about being released out of slavery,
purkan is
set free.
Yeah, purkan is when something is held and almost captured, and it's it's fighting to go out, and then purkan is when it's finally out, released. In a good way. It's finally released. It can be it could
be like a bird. Like a...
Something like that. Something like that. So, and that's the word purkan. So, al hanisim for the miracles, the al ha-purkan, and...
Ve'al ha-gvorot, ve'al ha-tshuot. So, for the heroism, and for our salvations.
Yes.
Like, you'd say salvations. It feels funny for me to say salvations.
Why? Because you don't say it in English?
No, we say salvation a lot. Because of Yeshua, like we talk a lot about him being our salvation.
Right. Oh, so, we pluralize it. Why not?
You've got lots of salvations.
Why not? Make it plural, make as much as you want.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
So.
And then for al nechamot,
for the comforts.
For the comforts. Shasita la'avot.
To our fathers that you've given, that you've done for our fathers. Bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. Those days in our time.
I think that's a Bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. That's a really good thing to take a hold of.
Oh,
it's a statement of faith, really, isn't it?
It's a how do you say, motto?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. It is because everything, and that's also the way we've said it we said it a few times, that that's also the right way, I believe, to read the scriptures and to learn from it. That it was, of course, it was by Yamim Hahem. It happened those days, but it's Bazman Hazeh. It's in our time.
Yeah.
It's in each and every one of us. There is a little Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. All of them. It's all in my soul. It's. We're all linked. You know what I mean?
Amen. Wow.
Let's do this.
Okay. So is this is a song that's sung a lot? Everybody knows it?
Yeah, we sing. Yeah, almost everybody knows it. It's very common. Very common. Both for Hanukkah and Purim. So when we do the webcast for Purim, we can sing it again.
To play the beatbox.
Yes, let's just do it once. Al hanisim ve'al hapurkan ve'al hagvuot ve'al hatshuot ve'al hanechamot she'asita lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. Al hanisim ve'al hapurkan ve'al hagvuot ve'al hatshuot ve'al hanechamot עשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. על הניסים ועל הפורקן ועל
free, for the miracles, for being set free, for the heroism, for our salvations, for all the comforts that you gave to our forefathers in those days, in this time.
על הניסים ועל הפורקן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנחמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. על הניסים ועל הפורקן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנחמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. על הניסים ועל הפורקן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנחמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. על הניסים ועל הפורקן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנחמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
It's a really beautiful song, but you know, I'm trying to imagine how it feels for you to sing it.
Oh.
I think it must feel very different. For me, I sing it, I feel it, but I don't have that. It's not the same connect for me.
I think.
I mean, I can thank God for all the miracles, for everything I've seen in my life, and for all of those things. But you're talking about it's like this history. When you talk about there's in each one of us there's a little Abraham or Jacob. You know, all of these people. That's actually in your DNA.
Yes, I mean when I talk about big events that have happened to our people, the event of Mount Sinai, the tear of the sea, the 10 plagues coming out of Egypt, entering the land, all these wars. I quite often talk about it in first person.
I know you do. I mean,
and then we did this, and then we did that, and then it happened to us, and because we were all there in a way.
And we talk as Christians, as believers, we talk about being grafted in. But I'm not quite. I mean, this is just something that's just coming to my mind right now, and I'm not sure. Grafted in the sense of inheriting things. But I'm not quite sure if I can ever be grafted into that aspect of what you're talking about. And
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
And so there's a little part of me that goes, well, I guess God's the only one that can do that. He can do that in my heart.
Sometimes I also feel that when we talk to groups, for example, and I so want them to understand, I want them to feel what I'm feeling, and I want them to be able to really experience it into the same extent that I'm experiencing it. It's hard because I really want to open the door and I want to share and I want people to really feel it, but I know that there's a point that from that point it's
I wonder if it's the same kind of connecting that I could say I've experienced in terms of receiving God's heart for you and your people, and how that is so deep inside of me. It's like nothing. I know nothing can. It's something He's done. So maybe
for example, I won't be able to relate to that, to the same extent because it's your experience.
Yes.
And that's also what's so beautiful about it, that we all have our roles and we all have our different experiences, and once we recognize that, then we can really maximize ourselves as well.
That's true.
But let me ask you about miracles.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know? Because we talk a lot about miracles, and I mean, I'm saying in Judaism, or you know what? In that case, I can really say we used to talk a lot about miracles because the essence of miracle has, I think, it changed a bit. Ever since the temple was taken from us. But how do you perceive miracle? What is a miracle? For you.
I think, I would say a miracle is, for me, a miracle is every single thing that God does on our behalf. But I suppose the true essence of the word miracle is something that God does that couldn't have happened in the natural. But it was in, if you take for instance a healing, somebody's healed of a deadly disease that basically there's no hope. Then God heals them. Or two people I know who were crippled and in a wheelchair. One of them, and they were, God literally raised them out of that wheelchair, just in a moment.
Wow. That's
a miracle for me, because how could that happen?
So basically something that goes beyond, let's say, nature. It goes against nature or
yes, something that goes beyond nature. But I think the miracle of a person coming to faith in God, that's a miracle. Because it's something we can't do for ourselves. Only He can do it. There's an expression, there's a lovely expression that I've heard someone I really enjoy his teaching. He says, it takes God to love God. And so that also is a miracle, something that...
Yeah, well, I think...
what about in Judaism?
It's a huge topic, and I think that I sense that this might be a whole new webcast. It really can be like a topic for a whole new webcast. But in the more conservative way of looking at it is basically to separate between a miracle and what we call supervision.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so supervision is basically this is what God does, right? This is what He does. He's watching over us, and He's leading the world in a natural way, in the ways of nature. And a miracle is something that goes against that. That something definitely should happen, but it happens the other way. For example, water running up the stream, for example, something like that. But this is the more conservative one. I'll tell you, today over Shabbat, I've had just got this small conversation with my wife, preparing things for the meal, and she said something about it was such a miracle that this and this happened, and I said to her, well, technically it wasn't a miracle because it's it didn't go beyond nature, it's let's say it's a supervision, and then she looked at me and she said, no, it's a miracle. Anything, it's just leave me alone with all these definitions of stuff. It's a miracle. I felt that God was doing it, and I felt His hand doing it. So what do you mean it's not a miracle? If that's not a miracle, then what is?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, fine. It's it's basically that.
No, I think the more that you look for God's action, the more you look for Him to act on your behalf, the more you see it. And the more you acknowledge it, somehow it just becomes a part of everyday life. So you could say, we use that word miracle. It'd be an interesting thing to really
it's definitely
about.
Something to talk about. But it's a week of that. We use the word nes. Nes is a miracle.
Yes.
We use the word nes so much, and we thank Him for those for miracles. And this is also a time, we believe, that it's a time which is capable of miracles.
Yes.
And maybe this is something that I would like to finish with, is just to pray for this, to pray that we that we will be able to see those miracles, to recognize them as miracles, and to really embrace those right into our hearts, and be warm and protected, in His presence.
Amen.
So,
how would you pray that? Can you pray that for us?
Yeah, I can. Well, yes, I guess I can, but not just for you, but just
for
us.
That's what I mean.
Yes, for us.
Would you do that?
And I would say, Yehi Ratzon מלפניך, השם אלוקינו ואלוקי אבותינו, שנזכה לראות את הניסים בחיינו, ולהכיר בהם, ולהודות עליהם, and to thank for them, ולחיות בצלך תמיד. אמן.
Amen. Can you tell us what that was in English?
It's may it be, Yehi Ratzon is like, may this be your will, to allow us to see miracles and to recognize these things as miracles from you. And may we always live in your tent.
Ah, beautiful.
May we always live in your tent. Amen.
I mean, Israel has certainly seen a lot of miracles since it's...
it's a living miracle.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. Ani ma'amin?
Yeah.
Yalla.
I know you want to do that.
Of course I do. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח. אני מאמין ואף על פי שיתממע עם כל זה, אחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא, בכל יום שיבוא. ואף על פי שיתממע עם כל זה, אחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא, בכל יום שיבוא. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח. אני מאמין ואף על פי שיתממע עם כל זה, אחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא, בכל יום שיבוא. ואף על פי שיתממע עם כל זה, אחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא, בכל יום שיבוא. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
I believe with a complete faith in the coming of the Mashiach, and even though he is delayed, I will wait for him. Amen.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us and for dedicating the time. And we wish to have more time with you.
Yeah.
And to be with you here.
Yeah. Think about it. Think about coming. Check it out on my website, and you can see all the things on the Now in Jerusalem page about coming and joining us. And we get to discuss these things, not just Gil and myself, but you too.
Hanukkah Sameach. Toda.